Hey, welcome back to True Story with John Gibson. Today is a really special guest. He is let's say he's the CEO, founder of Gaspari Nutrition. He is the very first Arnold Classic winner and a three-time Mr. Olympia runner-up, Richgaspari. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, completely my pleasure. As we were kind of talking offline, I've been a fan for a long time, and it's really interesting because, I found you through bodybuilding, and like a lot of young men and probably women out there, you inspired over the years. But then as I grew up with you, I've seen your career change and you became a business founder, as I mentioned, and I've really come to appreciate you for a whole nother slew of reasons, just from your business acumen and kind of the trials and tribulations I've seen you go over in the last probably couple of decades, just as being a professional, navigating that kind of world and landscape too. So again, I'm a big fan. I could ask you a million questions, but for everybody else's benefit, I'll narrow it to 3 or 4. But with that kind of robust intro, I do want to pick your brain just because it's so timely. As I had mentioned, you were the very first Arnold Classic winner. You were a former IFBB judge. I would just love to get your opinion on, as we record this now, this past weekend was the 2021 Arnold Classic. What do you think? What do you think about the lineup, Nick Walker, just, the overall landscape?
Well, it's good to see. I'm finally seeing the changing of the guard. You see the same guys for the last 6 to 10 years. You see, Big Ramy, William Bonac, and you see some guys coming up. You see Hani Rambod from who's the guy from Iran?
Oh, I know what you're talking. Oh gosh, the big
Hani Rambod is his trainer.
Yes.
Anyways,
Heidi Shupin.
Hani Shupin, sorry, yeah. Hani Shupin, and he's a newcomer, although he's an older guy, but he got his first try in Olympia, got 3rd place. What's really cool about Nick Walker, I'm from New Jersey, and he's a Jersey boy, and to see him win that show like that, and then I was reading a lot of the Instagram, like the haters going, this guy doesn't deserve to win. He didn't play his dues, and I go, my first try in the Olympia, I got 3rd place. I went into the pro world, won the show. My first pro show, I got 2nd in the Night of the Champions against Albert Beckles, a veteran. Yeah. I was a newcomer in the sport, and it's cool to see a newcomer like Nick Walker come in and clean house. And I believe, there's a changing of the guard of the new bodybuilders that are taking over the sport. The 2nd place guy from Canada,
Ian?
Ian, who beat Kuklo. Kuklo, I thought it was going to be 1st and 2nd, but then same. Ian came up and beat Kuklo, and Kuklo got 3rd, and Steve Kuklo, who's been around for over 10 years, as I said earlier. And now you see these new guys coming up between Ian, Nick Walker. Was really exciting to see, Hunter Labrada. So there's a lot of new bodybuilders, that are going to be coming into the scene, that are going to take over this, the sport and be on the top. I don't really like the fact that there's so many pros that come out. When I turned pro, and I'm in ancient times, when I turned pro, there was 5 pros in the world. You had to win the nationals, and then you had to go into the Mr. Universe, they call the World Championships, and you had to win that, and you went against all the national winners of the different countries, and those 5 weight classes became pro, and that was throughout the world. Right. Now you see, I don't know, there's got to be 200-300 pros or more a year coming into the sport. But what is cool is the cream rises to the top. The best guys come up, and you see those guys like a Nick Walker is a very new young guy. Right. And he, wins the Arnold Classic. Now, if William Bonac was in that show, because something happened with COVID and
he's translating there. Yeah.
I mean, I do believe, I think William Bonac would have given him a hard time. Especially in the best shape he could be in. But it's still cool to see these new guys come up.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that perspective. You touched on 2 things there that really are interesting, because you were that young phenom. I mean, if I remember correctly, like you said, you turned pro, I think 83, right? After
85.
Right? And then 84. I think by 85, you were on an Olympia stage though. It was, I mean, it happened quick. And you were like third, I think, right? In your first Olympia?
Well, 84, I won the world championships. I was training with Lee Haney. Lee Haney was my training partner. I moved to California. I was 20 years old. And Lee Haney saw me training and he goes, man, I never seen a guy train as hard as you, you know, with foam coming out of your mouth. You know, when I'm a Jersey guy, I moved to California and, you know, I was winning all the local shows in New Jersey. And, you know, what they all told me is, you know, you're a big fish in a little pond. He goes, let's see what you can do if you go into the big pond, you know? So I said, you know what? I'm moving to Venice, California. I'm going to California and I'm going to take over. I was a very confident, driven kid.
Yeah.
That's what got me to be one of the best. And, you know, I had a lot of people that said I wouldn't be a top pro. I didn't have the structure. I didn't have the genetics and all these things. And I still became one of the best pros of my era in bodybuilding. And if I didn't get injured, I probably would have went another 5 or 6 years. But, you know, I say fortunately and unfortunately. Fortunately, when I got injured, it got me to get out of the sport. Mm-hmm. I'm healthy today. Right. But it got me to start Gaspari Nutrition. Yeah. So with the same fire and drive and passion of being the best bodybuilder in the world, I got into becoming an entrepreneur, a businessman. And, you know, I always tell people to be the best bodybuilder in the world. I believe I beat some of the best genetically structured guys in bodybuilding because of this. Yeah. I had the mentality to go in to beat guys like Sean Ray, to beat guys like Bob Paris, to beat guys like Robbie Robinson.
Yes.
And I was able to beat these guys because I was driven to be the best. And I left no stone unturned, meaning, you know, when I went into a show, it wasn't just about my training. It was my training. It was my diet. It was my posing. It was my presentation, hours watching what I look like to show every strong point and not show the weak points. You know, my diet, supplementation. Yes. So I took everything into account. But unfortunately, when you do have genetic limitations, I couldn't beat Lee Haney because he had a much wider clavicle and a smaller waist. And that was the era of Lee Haney, you know, beating Arnold's record. Right. Still to get top 3, to get top 2 in 3 years in a row, getting third in top 5 for 7 years. I guess it's not bad in the sport.
Oh, you had a Hall of Fame career. Absolutely. And you've certainly won the Lifetime Achievement Award, which you deserve. But there's 2 things, you know, I have the benefit of hindsight and the internet. So to hear you tell me this is amazing because in preparation for our conversation today, I did a little research. And what blew my mind were 2 things. And you touched on both of them. And I go, this is exactly why Rich is who he is today. I go, man, it was in front of us all along. And again, the benefit of hindsight and the internet. One thing, an interview with Lee Haney, and it was Lee Haney talking about you being too intense. He goes, he's too intense. I can't even train. He's too intense. And I thought to myself, pause. I go, too intense for 8-time Mr. Olympia? How is that possible? So that was one. And so that just talks about your drive and tenacity, one. And then 2, you said no stone unturned. You were meticulous with your diet, nutrition. I can attest to that in that same documentary. I think it was A Battle for the Olympia. Everyone check it out. It's worth it. You were literally breaking down your nutrition. And this is, again, 1985, 86, something like that. You have books, you have encyclopedias. You're doing all this independent research. You're talking about the difference between gluten and your diet and these pastas and why you would pull sodium out. You were self-educating. You were so smart. You were so articulate. And again, pause. I thought to myself, of course, Gaspari Nutrition. It was always there. This guy was educating for years to become the best bodybuilding, learning about nutrition. So, you know, later on as a customer of yours, I go, no wonder the products were so good. Like, this guy has been doing this. This was always here. So it's amazing to hear you touch on that. It's really kind of enlightening.
You know, you talk about, you know, I knew about, you know, gluten back in the 80s, and now you hear about gluten-free diets and how it helps you. And this was me doing research about people who have gluten intolerances and how it makes them hold water. And what I noticed, and this you talking about doing experimentation, I said, okay, I'm going to take my macronutrients, I'm going to take my carbs. And off season, you know, I was always in good shape. I separated. I said, okay, I'm going to go with gluten carbs and I'm going to go with non-gluten carbs and see what happens in 2 weeks' time, what happens to my body. Gluten carbs would be pastas, breads, but I would measure it out to make sure it was exactly the same amount of carbs that I was taking with sweet potatoes, oatmeal, and rice. And I experimented. I said, wow, when I did the bread and the pasta, exact same macronutrient amount of carbs, complex carbs, I had a film of water. So I go, there's something there. I need to cut out all gluten. And what I was known for, as you know, in my era, I was known as the most ripped bodybuilder in history. I was able to get striated glutes, get into a condition no other bodybuilders before me were able to do.
Right.
And that was my strength to go against all these other great bodybuilders. And it was all because of the knowledge I had in nutrition. Right. And it's true. I saw this as a natural transition because I love doing the research. I love studying. I felt that 70 to 80% of my success in bodybuilding was nutrition and supplementation. As some people say, no, it's just the training. The training is one part of it, but you're all day, with 6 meals, 7 meals a day. And how are you eating? And what are you putting into your body to get into to gain muscle, lean out, have energy, all these things that I learned a lot, being a bodybuilder because I wanted to be the best.
Right. Yeah, great. So switching gears a little to I want to talk about Gaspari Nutrition too. So what a story in that, here we are, man. It's amazing because just from, again, a consumer's perspective, and I know a little better, you weren't an overnight company, but in some ways it felt like you were an overnight success, which is just crazy, but you had a lot of starts and stops along the way and some crazy stories. Can you share one? You have to, if you can, share one about when you were first starting and your inventory burned down in a house fire and just, some of the journey,
Well, when I started my business, I think I was telling you earlier, and I tell people my setbacks and failures are what make me a better person. So, you hear some people that had just total success their whole life. I've had so many bumps in the road that have made me stronger, made me, wiser in things that I've done. So when I started Gaspari Nutrition, just to let you guys know, I was competing in bodybuilding. Unfortunately, I had a herniated disc in my neck, ruptured. My career was basically over. I tried to make a comeback in the 90s. I competed up to 96, but I can tell that my body was just not changing no matter what I did with my diet, my training, and what it was just, I had issues with my nerves, my neck, back. So when I started Gaspari Nutrition, I basically sold off everything. Now, as a pro bodybuilder, I was living with fancy cars, living in great places. I basically set myself back to say, okay, I'm going to sell everything. I'm going to live back home so that I can I can save more money. I'm going to take that money and I'm going to start a business.
Right.
I knew a lot about nutrition and I said, I'm going to start Gaspari Nutrition. I still have a name in the sport and people will know me. And I'm just going to go door to door to door to door to get people to know about my products. Now, there's a big difference. When you're a pro bodybuilder, you're getting wined and dined. When you become a business person, and I see a lot of former athletes failing at this, the door isn't just wide open. A lot of people will not just open the door. So when I went to all these places, I had a lot of doors slammed in me. I had a lot of people say, I'm not interested in your product, or let me get one or two. And, at the beginning, you can be I went a year with hardly making any money. Yeah. Then it got into like 2 years of doing my business and I started building it up. And I was still kind of running it out of my parents' house. And I built up, where I was doing, about $1 million a year in the business, total and gross.
Yeah.
And then I had about $50,000-$60,000 of stock in the garage, and I was selling products. And then I had an electrical fire, everything destroyed, lost all my inventory, lost everything. And I had to start over again. And to do that, I didn't even have a place to stay. I had to actually go into my brother's basement, some dingy basement, and run the business again. Try to, I basically asked my manufacturer for a credit to give me some product, on terms, which he did.
Sure.
And I ended up paying back all that money to this gentleman that I still, I owe a lot to.
Yeah, great
And
partner.
I was able to regrow the business again. But it's, and a lot of people after something like that happened, they would basically give up. But I said to myself, you know what? I'm not giving up. This is what I want to do. And at that time when that happened, I had a girlfriend that was selling life insurance. So I was like, let me do something on the side. I was doing personal training, was doing the Gaspari Nutrition. So I went and got my license to sell insurance. I went out and I sold it for one day. And I did it for one day. And I actually was successful selling some insurance policies. I went back to the guy who ran the thing and I said, you know what? Good news here. I sold like three
sure. Policies.
Bad news is I quit because I'm not doing this. Yeah. It's not what I want to do.
You didn't love it. Yeah.
You got to follow your passion. And if you believe in something, my passion since I was 12 years old was I was going to be a pro bodybuilder. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was going to do it. I quit school, I quit college to move to California to be a pro bodybuilder. My parents were really upset with me. I came back with a pro title, started making money. And even with this, starting Gaspari Nutrition, it was my passion to build this company. And as you said earlier, this is my name. This is, I told my dad's an immigrant from Italy. And I said, your name is going to be everywhere. I'm going to get, that name is going to be seen everywhere in the world. And that's what I've been able to do. With
amazing. Yeah, what a journey. And it was, and it has been, man. I mean, I'm of a generation that saw you on covers. I saw you in commercials. I saw you in a cameo in a movie. I've seen it, and you were always kind of like famous. I had Monica Brandt recently on the show, and I'm like, it's a shame to me that people now, like kids, I'll say this Gen Z, they don't know how famous, and what it was like. If you're a bodybuilding fan, how exciting it was to get a magazine every month when that was your life force, and, it was really exciting and it was special. But yeah, still kind of staying on Gaspari Nutrition. You're right. I think a lot of people, it's like, I don't know that they would have the true heart of an entrepreneur to really overcome an obstacle like that so early, but you did, and you grew and you were able to go to scale and you got in with Europa. And, one thing I think that, I don't know if
the story about Europa, I want to tell the story about Europa.
Yeah,
very interesting. You said I was judging shows. I was judging actually local shows as well. And I was judging a show in Virginia. And there I saw, Eric Hillman, who was the owner of Europa, and we were judging together. I said, Eric, what does it take to get into Europa? This is when I just started Gaspari. Because, well, no one knows your brand. You really have, I got to see a demand for me to put it into Europa. So let me tell you the story is I basically go, okay, he's in Charlotte. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go throughout Charlotte and get accounts throughout I drove to Charlotte, started going to all stores, got stores to start buying the product. I also started making calls, and I was making up, my own, make up voices and stuff, and to say, hey, do you have Gaspari Nutrition? And the guy goes, oh, brand. Oh, I'm interested in buying it. It's that famous bodybuilder, Richgaspari. So I call those stores, and then I happen to call those stores and go into the stores. Hey, I got Gaspari Nutrition. He goes, we just had somebody inquire about it. Let me carry it. Awesome. So when I did that, I ended up calling Eric Hillman again. I said, are you interested in the brand? He goes, you know what? We checked on this, and you're actually, there's actually a demand for your brand.
Man, that's genius. It's smart. But that's target marketing, that's really smart. Wow. But that's feet on the ground. Like there's nothing like, going and forming those relationships together. Yeah, that's amazing. That's pretty, with that though, I feel like another thing you were really ahead of the game on, and I want to just kind of take a moment to give you more credit too, is you were really ahead of the curve on social media, YouTube, and you made a lot of stars, Hide, Flex. I mean, these guys were popular in their own right. I want to give them respect, but you invested in them. You were able to put them on the road every weekend and keep them busy and these things. Now they're superstars. years later. And I think that was something, again, you were so ahead of the curve, and from a brand perspective, really set you apart because, your ingredients mattered to you. And you were first of all, there's not a lot of supplement owners you're ever going to meet or hear from, right? But you could detail every one of your products. It was amazing, and I still think that that's something that's so special and unique about you. Kind of current status, just how are things going today?
Well, you talk about, bumps in the road and reinventing yourself. It still had happened, with Gaspari Nutrition. There was a lot of changes in the market. As you know, it was going more towards what was happening is, I did really well with the brand. And then what happened is because they see Richgaspari, making millions of dollars, let's get into the supplement business. Let's get into sports nutrition. Well, what happened is the total industry got saturated.
Yeah.
What happens when an industry gets saturated, you have more players in the game. There starts the margins or the profits start to get lower and lower and lower because of the competition. Well, that's what happened with Gaspari. It put me in a situation. I always say, the issue I had, and this is going back now 7 years ago,
right,
is Gaspari had death by 1,000 cuts. At the time, the industry was changing with more people coming into the industry, was going through a divorce, was going through a lawsuit. All these things that happened to me got me to basically, I think if I didn't go through the divorce, I would have been able to withstand it. Yeah. But mentally, it was just too much for me. And I basically went into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And from that point, I had to get back my business. I always knew that Gaspari is my name. Yeah. And even if someone else owned it, that's still my name.
Yes.
And I was able to partner with guys with believe it or not, minority shareholders. When I was a minority shareholder of my own company, I came up with, and little by little hacked away at getting back the company.
Amazing.
So, fast forward, having the company, again, changes that I saw before the pandemic that I go, you know what, this market is changing. Yeah. And I saw it changing because what you said is I would visit stores around the world, but I do it here in the United States. I go, the Boston area, the New York area, Miami area, Chicago area, Los Angeles, and I visit all these stores. And every time I'd go into these stores, they'd be like, okay, what are you giving me? This brand gives me this brand gives me that. Yeah. How much is, you're going to give me free fills? You're going to give me free shirts. How many demos are you going to do? And I'm like, thinking about it, I'm like, there's no way I can make money in this market.
Right.
So I sat there, and it's interesting. I give credit to a brand right now that's very big is Redcon. And, I see there's a big wooden plaque of Redcon. I go, what's that? I know what it was, but he's like, oh, it's Redcon. He goes, I have to sell that brand because everyone comes in for the brand. I said, do they give you free fills? Did they give you this? They give you that? He goes, no, they don't. I go, that's what I want to be. And I talked to Aaron, and what he did is he's one of the first to go into, and I'm not going to say I'm the first because I'm not. He saw the opportunity with direct to consumer. And I was able to see that and pivoted my business before the pandemic to direct to consumer.
Good.
Direct to consumer, where we do marketing on Google, Facebook, YouTube. And as you said earlier, I've always seen the benefits of YouTube. But I really did it with target marketing.
Yeah.
I really did it to grow Gaspari. Then I saw another opportunity starting an affiliate program that now we're growing now with athletes, in part of the brand. So pandemic happens, we're ready for it. And the business grows even more. And it's funny, during the pandemic, we developed 11 new products. Most people are going out of business. I developed 11 new products.
Yeah.
So that's basically, what I was able to do to there's a lot of noise out there with a lot of brands. So I had to try to get up there to get people to notice me. Right. And now it's cool. We reinvented we basically took a lot of the products and gave it a facelift.
Yeah.
Make it like, if you see the Super Pump Aggression.
Super Pump. Exactly. Yeah.
It's a different look. What I did is the old look, and then I put on this graffiti.
Yeah.
Size On, another great product. Gave it the same look with Get Swole. And we just keep coming up with cool products. And, it's funny, we keep doing this. And I want to be known as a serial entrepreneur. I've been doing this for many years. I just started another brand called Gaspari Ageless. What's Gaspari Ageless is guys like me that are, now in their 50s that want to maintain their quality of life, being able to go to the gym, look good, train hard. And I developed this brand. So it just started. It's, using the same model, direct to consumer, and we're going to grow it. And I'm just, like I said, I'm enjoying doing what I do.
I'm glad you said that. You keep reading my mind, Rich. So my next question for you was, and I asked this a lot of guests, so I'm 38 and I've been an athlete my whole life. I recently retired from competition in BJJ because I had my neck fused. I've had my lower back fused, been there, done that. So, but I say that to say, I ask because again, I'm 38. So I listen. I want to listen to my elders and people that have been there and done that. So, for example, recently we had two-time heavyweight champion Chris Bird on the show. He beat Klitschko, Holyfield. And I asked him too, I'm like, man, you're like looking great in your 50s. What are you doing to stay so healthy? So same question to you, man. I guess this new company, maybe. What are you doing?
I develop a lot of products. I've actually, when you look at Gaspari Nutrition, you see a lot of health products. We have omega-3 fish oil with enteric coating. I saw a need for these type of products for athletes.
Yeah.
So I just basically said, you know what, I want to go even more focused on the products that, people that are older can use to help them alleviate a lot of the issues. What's the biggest issue? What happens when you get older? You get stiff, you have aches and pains. Yeah. So I developed an anti-inflammatory. So I took the best of the best ingredients to put into this product. And it's been a great success. People are using it, getting great results. Another thing, what happens when you get older, you can't think as clear.
Yeah.
Brain fog. So I developed a nootropic for the brain. So it's called Brain Booster. So we have a brain booster. Your testosterone levels naturally go down. I develop a natural testosterone booster. I have another product coming out for heart health. It's going to help with better blood flow, lower cholesterol, help with heart output. Your heart is the most important muscle. Yes. So we're developing a product, for a healthy heart.
Yeah.
I came up with a collagen bar because, collagen now is a big buzzword for people to use to help with hair, skin, and nails.
Yes.
So we have that. I have another prostate care product, which is when you're still young, but you're 50, you start having enlarged prostate. And my dad, died of prostate cancer. So for me, I want to do everything to be able to help and, do a lot of reading on, prostate health and what causes cancer and what causes enlargement. So I've developed a product for that as well. So, I keep hacking away, but, I still have a love and passion for the bodybuilding or health and fitness. So we still have our sports nutrition. And then for, the anti-aging brand, I want to be a one-stop shop for the anti-aging. So there's a lot of brands out there that sell test boosters, they sell heart health, or they sell prostate. You can get it all with with Gaspari Ageless.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And it's such a natural, it makes total sense to me. As we all age, it's something we need to prioritize. And, Rich, it's so funny. Again, either you've had a bigger influence on me than I realized until this moment. But as you said that, I remember years ago, the first time I'd ever heard anybody preach taking a baby aspirin for heart health was you. And this is like 15 years ago, maybe. And but I filed that in my brain. Oh, then and I did some research and I learned why. But
I still do that.
that was you. Yeah, it's amazing. So, I thank you again so much for your time. Kind of a final question here. Where can people kind of reach you if they want to, for speaking engagements, if people are still doing that, for entrepreneur advice, just any kind of general inquiries?
There's a lot of places you can get me. You can go to my Instagram, Richgaspari. You can follow me there, direct message me there. You can see the brands, GaspariNutrition.com. If you want any of the great sports nutrition products I've developed and more coming. And for the guys that are older, they want to use products to help them with their health and wellness, go to GaspariAgeless.com. So those are the places to find my brand and myself.
Perfect. Thank you again, Rich. This has been a real honor and a real pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care, Rich.
Okay.